Have you ever wondered what happened to the beers that used to be on tap in every corner of Britain? The kind you'd start your weekend with, chat over after the match, or sip to the crackle of an old jukebox in the corner of the pub. They were part of everyday life, as familiar as the clink of pint glasses, the smell of sticky carpets, and a haze of cigarette smoke under yellow pub lights. Now they're gone, vanished. What's left are a few dusty bottles in private collections, old jingles still echoing in our heads, and memories. In this video, we'll look back at 5 legendary British beers, each one an icon in its day. Why did they disappear? And what does that tell us about our changing tastes, lost habits, and the times we're living in? If even one of these names sounds familiar, you were there. So give the video a like, subscribe, and let's go back to when beer wasn't a brand. It was simply part of who we were. Watney's Red Barrel, the beer that defined an era. In the 1960s, you could walk into almost any pub in Britain, and there it was, right on the bar, that unmistakable bright red pump. Red Barrel. It was like a road sign. Modern beer served here. No fuss, no sediment, no surprises. Brewed by Watney, Combe and Reed, it became a symbol of Britain's post-war industrial age, not just in how it looked, but what it stood for. Pasteurized, kegged and brewed for consistency, it was built for a time that valued reliability over individuality. And the taste? Software, slightly sweet, smooth to the point of being almost flat. It didn't challenge you or stir the senses. It just was. And that was enough. Red Barrel was for everyone, from workers in social clubs to couples out for a night of dancing. You didn't order it out of habit. You ordered it because you knew it. Its adverts were cheeky, its slogans clever, and that Red Barrel logo, it became a British icon. But everything that rises fast eventually falls. By the 1980s, drinkers had started to tire of safe beer. People wanted real flavor, real character. The camera movement openly pushed back against the keg standard, and Red Barrel became the scapegoat. Watney tried to replace it with fancier, special versions, but the soul had already gone. These days, Red Barrel is remembered with a smirk and a bit of fondness, but the memory sticks. Cool glass under your fingers, stale pub air, laughter across worn tables, and that red badge on the pump. It wasn't just a pint, it was a sign that Britain was changing, and we were changing with it. Double Diamond, the jingle everyone knew. A double diamond works wonders. If you watched telly in the 1960s, you definitely heard that line. Not once, not twice. It lodged itself in the public memory, just like the beer itself. Smooth, easy, and full of that quiet, urban optimism of the era. It was brewed in Burton upon Trent, a town where hops are practically part of the local DNA. And although Double Diamond was technically a pale ale, it tasted more like a hybrid. Slightly sweet, a touch buttery, with a soft, mellow bitterness on the finish. It wasn't rushed. You drank it with poise, like it wasn't just a pint, but part of your image. It fit perfectly into the mood of the time. A young professional, crisp shirt, Friday evening, city centre pub. But you'd find it just as often in working men's clubs or countryside hotels. It was universal, like a plain jumper that somehow looked good on everyone. Then came the 1980s, and everything changed. Lager was booming. Real ale was making a comeback. A new generation of drinkers wanted punch, edge, experience. Against all that noise, Double Diamond started to feel too calm, too polite. Sales dropped. Pubs swapped it out for bolder brews, and by the early 2000s, it was nearly gone. There were revival attempts, including one in 2025, but the magic didn't return. The era had passed. All that remained was the tune, and maybe a flicker of memory, a grey evening, steam rising off the pavement, the rustle of a folded newspaper, and a quiet pint of double diamond warming your hand. King and Barnes, a taste only locals truly knew. This was never the kind of beer that fought for space on supermarket shelves. It didn't show up on telly, didn't shout with catchy slogans. But if you lived in Sussex or ever wandered into a pub in Horsham, you'll know exactly what we're talking about. King and Barnes Old Ale was dark, rich, and just a touch sticky on the lips, like a warm blanket after a long, cold walk. You didn't knock it back, and you didn't order it just because it was familiar. You savored it, slowly, with purpose. It was brewed by a family-run brewery, one of those places where they still knew how to roast the malt just right, and where a touch of smoke in the aroma wasn't a mistake. It was tradition. You could taste treacle, toasted bread, a hint of dried fruit, but all in balance, never cloying. This was never a crowd pleaser. It was for the regulars, the ones who came for comfort, not chaos. Wooden beams overhead, a crackling fireplace in the corner, a plate of pie and mash, and a conversation that didn't need to go anywhere fast. But in 2000, the brewery was sold. The site shut down, and just like that, Old Ale was gone. Yes, the name lived on, under different owners. But the taste? Locals knew it wasn't the same. And with that taste went the very things that made the beer special. Locality, honesty, warmth. These days, if you mention King and Barnes to someone who's been in Horsham long enough, you might get a short pause, a small smile, maybe even a quiet nod of respect. Because this beer wasn't just a drink, it was an anchor in a world that wouldn't stop changing. Stone's Bitter, the beer that knew exactly who it was for. If you grew up in the north, especially in Sheffield, this beer needs no introduction. It was never advertised as a trendy choice, never served in cocktails, never pushed as a limited release. Stone's just was everywhere. Brewed since 1948 at Cannon Brewery, right in the heart of Sheffield, it quickly became a symbol of honest graft. The flavor was as straight-talking as its drinkers, pale in color, slightly dry, with a light, grainy body and a gentle, bitter finish. No fireworks, no fruit, no fuss. Stone's was like a work jacket, practical, dependable, worn in and trusted. It was poured in working men's clubs after a shift, in sports halls after training, in kitchens when mates popped round for just one. You didn't choose Stone's, it was already waiting for you. But like so many working-class icons, it became a victim of its own success. As the brand grew and landed in the hands of bigger breweries, the changes came. Production moved. The recipe was tweaked to appeal to a wider market, and people noticed, especially locals. In 1999, the original Sheffield brewery shut down, and from that point on, things weren't quite the same. You could still buy Stone's in cans at the shop, but the real stuff, pulled fresh from the keg with a satisfying clunk after a hard day, that was gone. And with it, a little piece of the city's soul. Today, Stone's is just a label. Back then, it was a name, a story, a taste that didn't just go down easy, it understood you. Whitbread Pale Ale, the quiet companion to everyday life. It never tried to be a legend. It didn't shout from billboards. It wasn't part of any big promotions. Whitbread Pale Ale was that kind of ordinary beer, and that's exactly why people remember it. Pale gold in color, with a light malty body and a touch of hops. No frills, no flair. It didn't compete for your attention. It simply turned up where it was needed. Lunch breaks on the factory floor, picnics by the lake, kitchen tables with lacy curtains and heavy-bottomed mugs. It was bought by the crate, Brought out at weddings, poured at parties. You'd share one with your dad on a Sunday afternoon after mowing the lawn. It wasn't a moment. It was a habit, a simple, comforting ritual. Then came the era of change, the 80s and 90s, and the shelves began to fill with louder cans, bolder styles, flashier branding. Suddenly Whitbread seemed old-fashioned. People stopped asking for it, and not long after, the brewing stopped too. No announcement, no farewell, just gone. But it stayed in people's memory, like the smell of a wooden kitchen, like the hum of an old fridge, like a casual toast made for no reason at all. Whitbread Pale Ale was never the headline act. It was the backdrop. But sometimes it's the backdrop that makes a place feel like home. It's gone now, and with it, a bit of the simplicity we once took for granted, and now miss more than we expected. Honorable mentions and one last sip. They didn't make our main list, but they absolutely deserve to be remembered. Courage Imperial Russian Stout, dark, strong, once brewed for the imperial court. It vanished by the 1990s, leaving behind little more than a name in old beer guides. Charrington Toby Ale, instantly recognizable thanks to the jolly clay jug on the label. A familiar face in countless London pubs. Younger's Number 3, a bold Scottish ale with real backbone, one that slipped away quietly when no one was looking. Whitbread Light Ale, the lighter brother of the pale, often served with a bitter at lunchtime. Good luck even finding a photo of it now. Each of these beers was part of the culture, not just drinks, but moments. They didn't vanish overnight, they simply faded, like the background hum that once filled our lives. If even one of these names brought back a flicker of nostalgia, let us know in the comments. Tell us where you were, who you were with, what the day felt like. Sometimes it's the small things, a pint, a scent, a table in the corner, that say more about the past than any history book. If this video stirred a memory, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey into a time when beer wasn't a trend. It was part of everyday life. See you next round, and cheers to everything we still remember.